Let's talk about Lewis dot structures. A Lewis dot structure is a diagram that shows us the arrangement of valence electrons between atoms. It uses a letter to denote the element of the atom, and dots and lines around this atom to demonstrate valence electrons and bonds. Let's take the example of oxygen. We're first going to denote it with its chemical symbol from the periodic table, which in this case is O. Now, since oxygen is in group 6 of the periodic table, we know it is going to have 6 valence electrons. We can draw this in the form of dots around oxygen. Each dot represents 1 valence electron. This is going to be your Lewis dot structure for an atom of oxygen. Now, let's say we want to draw a Lewis dot structure of a covalent molecule. Well, if we look at our oxygen, it doesn't have a full valence shell. It doesn't fulfill the octet rule, which states that atoms prefer to have 8 valence electrons. In order to gain these valence electrons, this oxygen atom is going to need to form bonds with other atoms. Let's draw another oxygen for it to bond with. We can draw it in the same way, denoting it with the letter O and placing 6 valence electrons around it. These two oxygens are going to form 2 covalent bonds, in which they share electrons to fulfill the octet rule. Let's say it's these 4 electrons that they share. With Lewis dot structures, we can simply represent each of these covalent bonds as a line. Alright, so that's how we draw covalent bonds with Lewis dot structures. But what about ionic molecules? Well, let's use the example of table salt, sodium chloride. Let's draw our sodium, Na, and our chlorine, Cl. Sodium is in group 1 on the periodic table, so we know it has 1 valence electrons. And chlorine is in group 7, so we know it has 7 valence electrons. In an ionic bond, the metal, in this case sodium, gives a valence electron to the nonmetal, in this case chlorine. This way, both atoms end up with 8 valence electrons. Sodium loses the electron shell containing the electron it gave to chlorine, and its previous electron shell, which has 8 electrons, becomes its valence shell. Now, since electrons are negative and chlorine has gained an electron, chlorine gets a negative charge, and since sodium has lost an electron, it gains a positive charge. In Lewis dot structures, we're going to put a bracket around the negatively charged anion, and in some cases you could also put the bracket around the positively charged cation. That's what you need to know for Lewis dot structures, and I'll link a playlist in the description that'll have content on valence electrons and bonds if you are confused on what those are.